I haven't touched a woman in 12 years, the mountain man declares to the black mail-order bride standing in the dusty general store, then shocks every witness by announcing his intent to marry her immediately. The townspeople eye her with barely concealed contempt, whispering that another disposable bride will vanish into the wilderness, forgotten like all the others. They expect her to become nothing more than a ghost haunting some remote cabin. But this mountain hermit carries secrets from his past life in civilization, while she harbors knowledge that could save lives the town doctor lets die through incompetence and prejudice. Their unlikely union threatens to expose corruption that runs deeper than anyone imagines. Will their partnership survive when the powerful men of this frontier town realize what they truly stand to lose? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach wheels ground to a halt in the dust of Cedar Ridge, Colorado territory. Etta Jameson stepped down onto the wooden platform, her worn traveling dress catching the harsh mountain wind. The few townspeople who bothered to look did so with cold eyes and turned backs. She clutched her carpetbag tighter. Inside were the only possessions that mattered now. Medical instruments wrapped in cloth, bottles of tinctures and powders, her father's surgical tools, hidden beneath layers of fabric and false bottoms. The general store clerk barely glanced up when she entered. His weathered face showed no interest in helping another mail-order bride find her way. Two women near the counter whispered behind gloved hands, their words sharp enough to cut. Another one bound for disappointment. Wonder how long this one will last. Etta pretended not to hear. She had heard worse. Much worse. The memory of flames consuming her medical practice back east still haunted her dreams. The angry faces of men who could not accept that a woman of her background possessed knowledge they lacked. Dr. Cornelius Blackwood entered the store with the swagger of a man who owned everything he surveyed. His black coat was pristine despite the dusty streets. His eyes swept over Etta with dismissive calculation. "Just another disposable bride," he muttered to the clerk. "They never last long out here." The store fell silent. Even the whispering women stopped their chatter. A shadow filled the doorway, blocking the afternoon sun. The figure that entered made every person in the building take a step back. Silas McGraw stood nearly 7 feet tall. His mountain man's coat bore the wear of a dozen winters. His beard was streaked with gray, his hands scarred from years of surviving alone in the wilderness. He had not set foot in Cedar Ridge for 12 long years. His eyes found Etta immediately. She did not flinch under his gaze. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, perhaps. Not of faces, but of circumstances. Two people who had learned to survive where others expected them to fail. "You the bride?" His voice carried the roughness of a man unaccustomed to conversation. "I am." Silas studied her for another moment. The store remained silent. Dr. Blackwood's mouth hung slightly open. The clerk forgot to breathe. "I haven't touched a woman in 12 years, Silas said. The words rang through the store like a church bell. "But I aim to marry you proper." The townspeople exchanged glances. This was not how these arrangements usually proceeded. Mail-order brides were typically claimed quietly, whisked away to whatever fate awaited them in remote cabins and isolated homesteads. "When?" Etta asked. "Now." Dr. Blackwood found his voice. "Now see here, McGraw. There are proper procedures, medical examinations, legal documentation." Silas turned his attention to the doctor. His expression could have frozen the mountain streams. "I don't recall asking for your opinion, Blackwood." The preacher was summoned from his afternoon nap. He performed the ceremony with nervous haste, clearly wanting the strange affair concluded as quickly as possible. No celebration followed. No well-wishers offered congratulations. Silas led Etta to his horse, a massive stallion built for mountain terrain. He helped her onto the saddle behind him without ceremony. The townspeople watched from windows and doorways as they rode toward the treacherous paths that led up into the high country. The journey took 3 hours. Etta observed everything during their climb. The way Silas navigated impossible terrain with practiced ease. the respectful distance he maintained even while sharing the horse, his crude but honest communication when he warned her of dangerous passages. She also observed the signs of human activity scattered throughout the mountains: abandoned mining equipment, makeshift camps where injured men had clearly rested, bloodstains on rocks that spoke of accidents and violence. Her medical training made such evidence impossible to ignore. The cabin that would become her new home sat on a plateau surrounded by towering pines. It was basic shelter and nothing more. One room, a stone fireplace, a single bed that had clearly been built for one person. "It's not much," Silas admitted as they dismounted. "It's honest," Etta replied. That evening, Silas surprised her by gathering his bedroll and heading for the door. She watched him prepare a fire pit outside the cabin. He intended to sleep under the stars, giving her the privacy of the interior. "The cold will be harsh tonight," she said. "I've survived worse." She did not argue, but she made note of his unexpected honor. This mountain hermit possessed principles that many so-called civilized men lacked. As darkness fell, Etta unpacked her belongings by lamplight. She carefully arranged her hidden medical supplies in the cabin's storage areas. The surgical instruments went beneath loose floorboards. The medicines found places behind stacked firewood. Through the single window, she could see the distant lights of Cedar Ridge far below. She thought of Dr. Blackwood and his arrogant dismissal of human suffering. She thought of the injured men whose blood she had observed on the mountain rocks. She thought of the mining accidents that surely occurred regularly in this harsh country. Her father had taught her that medical knowledge carried responsibility. Where there was suffering, a healer had obligation to act. The question was whether this strange mountain man would prove to be ally or obstacle when that time came. Outside, Silas stared up at the same stars, wondering what secrets his new bride carried in that carefully guarded carpet bag. The fever started on the third morning. Etta woke to find Silas shivering by the dying fire pit outside, his massive frame curled in unnatural positions. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mountain cold. "You're burning up," she said, pressing her hand to his skin. Silas tried to stand and nearly collapsed. The infection had been building for days, hidden beneath his stoic exterior. Now it threatened to consume him entirely. "Just need rest," he muttered through chattering teeth. Etta helped him inside the cabin. Her trained eye immediately spotted what he had been hiding. 3 parallel gashes ran across his left shoulder. Bear claws had torn deep into muscle and sinew. The wounds had been crudely bandaged, but never properly cleaned. When did this happen? A week ago, maybe more. The bandages came away, revealing infected tissue. Red streaks spread outward from the wounds like poison rivers. Without immediate treatment, the infection would kill him within days. Etta made her decision. She retrieved her carpet bag and began removing the hidden panels. Her father's surgical instruments emerged first, gleaming scalpels and forceps that had saved countless lives. Bottles of carbolic acid and laudanum followed. Silas watched through fever-clouded eyes as his mail-order bride transformed into someone else entirely. Her movements became precise and confident. Her gentle manner gave way to clinical authority. "You're a doctor," he said, not a question. "I was, in another life." She cleaned the instruments with methodical care. The cabin filled with the sharp scent of antiseptic. Silas observed her preparations with growing awareness that his assumptions about this woman had been completely wrong. "My father was a doctor," Etta explained as she worked. "Born into slavery but learned to read from his master's medical books. After freedom came, he practiced in secret, taught me everything he knew." The memories came flooding back as she prepared the surgical site. Her father's patient hands guiding hers through her first sutures, the hidden clinic they operated from their small home, the grateful faces of patients who had nowhere else to turn. "I had my own practice in Philadelphia," she continued. "Served families the white doctors refused to treat. Word spread. Business grew." Silas gritted his teeth as she began cleaning the infected wounds. The pain was excruciating, but he sensed her skill. Her touch was steady and sure. "What happened?" Etta's hands paused for just a moment. The memory of that terrible night still burned bright in her mind. The angry mob, The torches, the accusations of witchcraft and unnatural practices. Some people couldn't accept that someone like me possessed knowledge they lacked. They burned my clinic, threatened worse if I didn't leave town. She resumed her work, cutting away infected tissue with surgical precision. Silas remained still despite the agony. He understood persecution. He understood running from a past that refused to stay buried. The surgery took 2 hours. Etta cleaned and drained the wounds, removed damaged tissue, and sutured the gashes with tiny, perfect stitches. She administered carefully measured doses of laudanum for pain and prepared poultices to draw out remaining infection. "You'll live," she announced when the work was finished, "but you need rest. Real rest." Silas slept for 18 hours straight. When he woke, the fever had broken. The red streaks were fading. His shoulder ached, but the deep, poisonous throbbing was gone. He found Etta reorganizing the cabin with quiet efficiency. Medical supplies now occupied their own dedicated space. She had converted a corner into a makeshift examination area. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. "A debt repaid. You gave me shelter. I gave you your life." 2 days later, their first patient arrived. A grizzled trapper named Pete stumbled up the mountain path, his leg mangled by a poorly set bear trap. Word had somehow spread through the wilderness network that the mountain man's wife possessed healing skills. Etta examined the leg with professional detachment. The bone was fractured, but not shattered. The wound was infected, but not beyond saving. She could help this man walk again. "Can you pay?" she asked. Pete produced a small pouch of gold dust. "This enough?" Etta looked at Silas. He gave a slight nod. They needed supplies if she was going to continue practicing medicine. Her father had taught her that healers deserved fair compensation for their skills. The surgery was successful. Pete left 3 days later walking with only a slight limp. He promised to spread word carefully among the mountain folk that help was available for those who needed it. More patients followed. A miner with a crushed hand. A homesteader's wife suffering difficult pregnancy complications. A young cowboy with infected gunshot wounds. Each success built Etta's reputation among those who lived outside the formal boundaries of civilization. Silas became her assistant. He learned to prepare instruments, mix medications, and comfort patients during procedures. His imposing presence also served as protection. Mountain medicine attracted desperate people, and desperate people sometimes made poor decisions. Their partnership deepened with each shared challenge. Mutual respect grew into something warmer. Trust became affection. The arrangement marriage was becoming something real, but success carried dangers. Down in Cedar Ridge, Dr. Blackwood was beginning to notice his declining patient list. Sheriff Wade Thornton was receiving complaints about unauthorized medical practice in the mountains. The powerful men of the territory were starting to pay attention to the black woman who dared to heal where they could not. The storm clouds were gathering. Soon, Etta and Silas would face challenges that would test everything they had built together. The cabin had transformed into something resembling a proper medical facility. Etta had organized shelving for her growing collection of medicines and instruments. A dedicated examination table replaced the makeshift arrangements of earlier weeks. Clean linens and antiseptic solutions occupied their designated spaces with military precision. Word of the mountain doctor spread through whispered conversations and coded messages. Patients arrived at all hours, following treacherous paths to reach the only healer who would treat them without judgment or excessive cost. Silas had become more than an assistant. He anticipated Etta's needs during procedures, prepared medications according to her precise instructions, and managed the steady stream of visitors with calm authority. His knowledge of mountain terrain proved invaluable for reaching patients who could not make the journey to the cabin. Their personal relationship had evolved beyond the practical arrangement that brought them together. Shared meals featured genuine conversation. Evening hours were spent reading from Etta's medical texts by lamplight, with Silas absorbing knowledge that fascinated his analytical mind. The respectful distance of their early days had shortened into comfortable companionship. The morning that changed everything began like any other. A ranch hand arrived before dawn, his horse lathered from hard riding, His message was urgent and desperate. "It's the Morrison boy," he gasped. "Took sick sudden. High fever. Can't keep nothing down. Doc Blackwood says ain't nothing to be done." Thomas Morrison was the 12-year-old son of the territory's most prominent rancher. His family owned vast stretches of grazing land and held significant political influence. Dr. Blackwood had been treating the boy for 3 days without success. Etta gathered her emergency medical kit. The symptoms described suggested acute appendicitis. Left untreated, the condition would kill the child within hours. Surgery was the only option, but it would be the most challenging operation she had ever attempted. The Morrison Ranch sprawled across a fertile valley 2 hours from the mountain cabin. The main house was a testament to frontier wealth, with glass windows and painted siding that spoke of Eastern sophistication. A crowd of worried family members and ranch workers had gathered in the yard. Inside, the boy lay pale and motionless on his bed. His breathing was shallow and labored. His skin burned with fever that no amount of cold cloths could reduce. Dr. Blackwood stood nearby, looking frustrated and defeated. "What is she doing here?" Blackwood demanded when he saw Etta enter the room. "She's here because my son is dying," James Morrison replied firmly. "And you've admitted you can't help him." Etta examined the boy quickly but thoroughly. Her fingers found the telltale tenderness in his lower abdomen. The symptoms confirmed her initial diagnosis. Appendicitis had progressed to the dangerous stage where the organ might rupture at any moment. "He needs surgery immediately," she announced. Dr. Blackwood laughed bitterly. "Surgery? That's barbaric. The boy needs rest and proper medication." "Your medication isn't working," Morrison observed. "His condition has worsened under your care." Etta began preparing her instruments on the bedroom dresser. Silas appeared at her side, having already anticipated her needs. He arranged clean linens and prepared the surgical area with practiced efficiency. The operation required absolute precision. Etta made a careful incision in the boy's abdomen, her hands steady despite the enormous pressure. She located the infected appendix, swollen and dangerous. One wrong move could cause it to burst, spreading poison throughout the child's body. Silas monitored the boy's breathing and pulse while Etta worked. His calm presence provided the stability she needed to maintain focus. Dr. Blackwood watched from the corner, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement as he witnessed surgical techniques he had never mastered. The infected organ came free cleanly. Etta irrigated the surgical site and began the delicate process of closing the incision. Her sutures were tiny and perfect, ensuring minimal scarring and optimal healing. 2 hours after the surgery began, Thomas Morrison's fever started to break. His breathing became stronger and more regular. Color returned to his pale cheeks. The crisis had passed. "He'll make a full recovery," Etta told the gathered family members. "Keep the surgical site clean and watch for signs of infection. He should be on his feet within a week." James Morrison pressed a heavy leather pouch into Etta's hands. Gold coins clinked inside, more money than she had ever possessed. "You saved my son's life. I won't forget this debt." The news of the successful surgery spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. The mountain doctor had accomplished what the town's official physician could not. Patients who had previously accepted Dr. Blackwood's limited skills began seeking alternatives. Etta's practice expanded rapidly. A stream of visitors made regular pilgrimages to the mountain cabin. Miners with crushed limbs, ranchers with infected wounds, women with difficult pregnancies, children with mysterious fevers. Each successful treatment added to her growing reputation. The transformation in their relationship became undeniable during these busy weeks. Silas showed increasing tenderness in private moments. Etta caught herself looking forward to their quiet evenings together. The partnership built on mutual respect was becoming something deeper. One morning, Etta realized she had missed her monthly cycle. The signs were unmistakable. She was carrying Silas's child, a development that would complicate everything they had built together. But complications were already brewing in Cedar Ridge. Dr. Blackwood's pride had been wounded by his very public failure with the Morrison boy. Sheriff Thornton was fielding complaints about unauthorized medical practice and unlawful competition with licensed physicians. The powerful men of the territory were beginning to see Etta as a threat to the established order. They were planning their response, and that response would test every alliance she and Silas had forged in the wilderness. The riders appeared at dawn, their horses cutting dark silhouettes against the mountain sunrise. Sheriff Wade Thornton led the group, his badge catching the early light. Behind him rode 2 deputies and Dr. Blackwood, whose satisfied expression revealed the source of the official complaint. Etta spotted them first through the cabin window. She had been preparing morning medications when the sound of approaching hooves made her look up. Her hands instinctively moved to her still flat stomach, where new life was growing. "Silas," she called quietly. He emerged from the storage shed where he had been organizing medical supplies. One glance at the approaching riders told him everything he needed to know. His expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. Sheriff Thornton dismounted with deliberate ceremony. His hand rested casually on his gun belt, a subtle threat that everyone present understood. The deputies flanked him with practiced precision. "Etta McGraw," Thornton announced formally. "You're under arrest for practicing medicine without proper license and endangering public welfare." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward with obvious satisfaction. "The Territorial Medical Board has filed formal complaints. This woman has been performing dangerous procedures without authorization." Silas positioned himself between the sheriff and his wife. The mountain man's imposing frame cast a long shadow across the cabin yard. Something in his stance suggested familiarity with such confrontations. "She's saved more lives in 3 months than Blackwood has in 3 years, Silas said quietly. Thornton's eyes narrowed. "That's not your decision to make, McGraw. The law is clear about unauthorized medical practice." "The law," Silas repeated, his voice carrying subtle emphasis. "Tell me, Sheriff, which specific statute are you citing?" The question caught Thornton off guard. Mountain hermits were not supposed to possess knowledge of legal procedures. His hesitation revealed uncertainty about the exact charges he was attempting to enforce. Dr. Blackwood filled the silence. Territorial Statute 14-7 regarding medical licensing requirements. Section 3 specifically prohibits unqualified individuals from performing surgical procedures. "And what qualifies someone to practice medicine in this territory?" Silas asked, still blocking access to Etta. "Graduation from an accredited medical college and licensing by the Territorial Board," Blackwood recited triumphantly. "Interesting," Silas mused. "Because I seem to recall that you never graduated from medical college either, Blackwood. Your credentials consist of a brief apprenticeship with a frontier doctor who himself lacked formal training." The sheriff's hand moved closer to his weapon. "How would you know anything about medical licensing requirements, McGraw?" Silas smiled, and the expression was not pleasant. "Because I used to enforce those same laws, back when I wore a badge in this territory." The revelation struck the group like lightning. Sheriff Thornton actually took a step backward. Dr. Blackwood's confident expression crumbled into confusion and fear. "That's impossible," Thornton stammered. "You've been living in the mountains for 12 years. "Exactly 12 years, Silas confirmed. "Since the day I refused to participate in the lynching of an innocent man. Since the day I realized that men like you use the law as a weapon instead of a shield." The truth hung in the air like mountain mist. Silas McGraw had not always been a hermit. He had once been Sheriff McGraw, a lawman who chose exile over corruption. "You abandoned your duty," Thornton accused, but his voice lacked conviction. "I chose duty over convenience. There's a difference." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. 4 armed men faced one mountain hermit and his pregnant wife. The odds appeared overwhelming, but something in Silas's demeanor suggested the mathematics were not as simple as they seemed. Dr. Blackwood tried to reassert control. "Whatever your past, McGraw, it doesn't change current law. This woman is practicing medicine illegally." "Show me her victims," Silas challenged. "Show me one patient she's harmed. Show me one procedure she's botched." "The Morrison boy could have died from her butchery," Blackwood sputtered. "The Morrison boy was dying from your neglect. She saved his life after you gave up." Thornton drew his weapon. The deputies followed suit. The cabin yard became a powder keg waiting for a spark. "Step aside, McGraw. Don't make this harder than necessary." Silas did not move. You'll have to go through me." Etta placed her hand on her husband's arm. She could feel the tension radiating from his powerful frame. Violence seemed inevitable, and violence would solve nothing. "There's another way," she said quietly. She stepped around Silas before he could stop her. Her medical bag was already packed, as if she had anticipated this moment. Her movements were calm and deliberate, showing no fear, despite the guns pointed in her direction. "I'll come with you," she told the sheriff, "but I want it known that I've harmed no one. Every patient I've treated can testify to my skill and care." Thornton hesitated. He had expected resistance, not dignified surrender. Etta's composure unsettled him more than Silas's defiance. "You're making the right choice," Dr. Blackwood said, but uncertainty colored his words. Silas caught Etta's hand. "We run. Now. Into the high country where they can't follow." She squeezed his fingers gently. "Running won't solve this. It will only prove their accusations. Then we fight. Not with guns, not with violence. There's a better way." She kissed him softly, a gesture of love and farewell that made the watching lawman uncomfortable. Then she walked toward the sheriff's horse with her head held high. But Silas McGraw had not survived 12 years in the wilderness by accepting defeat. As the riders prepared to leave with their prisoner, he was already planning their next move. The game was far from over. The jail cell in Cedar Ridge had been built for drunks and petty thieves, not skilled physicians. Etta sat on the narrow cot, her hands folded in her lap, projecting dignity despite her circumstances. Through the barred window, she could see townspeople gathering in clusters, their conversations animated and divided. Dr. Blackwood visited that first afternoon, his confidence restored by the bars between them. "You should have stayed in your place. This territory has no room for your kind practicing medicine." Etta met his gaze steadily. "My kind? You mean competent physicians?" His face reddened. "You know what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean. That's why you're afraid." Meanwhile, Silas had vanished into the wilderness. Sheriff Thornton assumed the mountain man was gathering supplies for a rescue attempt or planning an armed assault on the jail. The sheriff doubled the guard and prepared for siege. He was thinking too small. Silas rode hard through mountain passes that existed on no official maps. His destination was the abandoned mining camp where he had spent his first winter of exile 12 years earlier. The site held secrets that could change everything. The camp sat in a hidden valley surrounded by towering peaks. Rusted equipment and collapsed structures told the story of failed dreams and broken fortunes. But Silas knew what the prospectors had missed. They had been looking in the wrong places. He dismounted near a seemingly worthless stretch of rocky ground. His trained eye spotted the telltale signs that amateur miners had overlooked. Quartz veins ran through the exposed rock face like silver lightning. The ore samples he chipped away glittered with promise. This was the richest silver deposit in Colorado territory, and according to the legal documents hidden in his cabin, Silas McGraw owned every acre. The paperwork told a story of careful planning and patient investment. During his years as sheriff, Silas had used his salary to purchase worthless mining claims that other prospectors had abandoned. The territory recorder had been happy to sell the supposedly barren land for minimal fees. 12 years of exile had given Silas time to properly survey his holdings. What appeared to be worthless rock was actually a fortune in precious metals. Conservative estimates placed the value at over $2 million. That wealth made him one of the richest men between Denver and San Francisco. The next morning, Silas rode into Cedar Ridge, dressed in his finest clothes. Gone was the rough mountain man appearance. In its place stood a gentleman of obvious means, his bearing suggesting education and authority that commanded attention. His first stop was the territorial courthouse. Judge Harrison looked up from his morning docket to find the legendary hermit standing before his bench with legal documents and survey maps. "These mining claims," Silas said without preamble, "represent the largest silver deposit ever discovered in Colorado territory." The judge examined the paperwork with growing amazement. The claims were legitimate and properly filed. The survey reports were professionally prepared and officially notarized. The mineral assays showed wealth beyond imagination. "Why bring this to me now?" Judge Harrison asked. "Because I intend to develop these claims. That will require workers, equipment, and significant political support from territorial authorities." The implications were staggering. Mining operations of this scale would transform Cedar Ridge from a frontier outpost into a major commercial center. The economic benefits would touch every business and family in the territory. Silas's second stop was the Cedar Ridge Bank. President William Hartwell nearly fainted when the mountain hermit deposited ore samples worth more than the bank's total assets. Within hours, word of the discovery had spread through every business establishment in town. His third stop was the telegraph office. Messages went out to Denver and San Francisco, summoning the territory's most prominent lawyers and mining engineers. The legal machinery of wealth and power began turning in Silas McGraw's favor. By afternoon, everything had changed. The territorial governor himself sent urgent telegrams expressing interest in the mining development. Businessmen who had never acknowledged Silas's existence were suddenly eager for meetings and partnerships. Dr. Blackwood found himself summoned to uncomfortable conversations with town leaders who questioned his medical competence. Patients began openly comparing his failures to Etta's successes. The political winds were shifting against him with devastating speed. Sheriff Thornton discovered that his position depended on the support of men who now viewed Silas McGraw as the territory's most important citizen. Arresting the wife of such a wealthy and influential man began to seem like a serious career mistake. James Morrison arrived in town that evening with a dozen prominent ranchers and business leaders. They had come to testify on Etta's behalf, prepared to describe in detail how her medical skills had saved their lives and the lives of their family members. "The woman saved my son," Morrison announced publicly. "Any man who calls that a crime is no friend of mine." The testimonials were overwhelming. Miners spoke of crushed limbs that Etta had repaired. Ranchers described infected wounds that she had healed. Mothers told of difficult births where her intervention had saved both women and children. Even some of Dr. Blackwood's former patients stepped forward to contrast his failures with Etta's successes. The town doctor's reputation crumbled under the weight of documented incompetence. Judge Harrison called an emergency hearing. The courtroom was packed with supporters carrying torches and demanding Etta's immediate release. The political pressure had become irresistible. "The charges against Mrs. McGraw are hereby dismissed," the judge announced. Furthermore, this court recognizes her valuable contributions to territorial medical care. Silas was waiting when the jail doors opened. Etta walked into his arms, her dignity intact and her reputation secured. The crowd cheered their reunion with genuine enthusiasm, but the victory was more than personal. Together they had exposed corruption and challenged prejudice through strategy rather than violence. The territory would never be quite the same. 6 months after her release from jail, Etta stood in the doorway of the Colorado Territory's first integrated medical clinic. The building occupied prime real estate on Cedar Ridge's Main Street, its large windows and professional signage announcing a new era of healthcare to anyone who cared to look. The clinic had been Silas's wedding gift to her, built with silver money and designed according to her exact specifications. 3 examination rooms, a fully equipped surgical suite, and a dispensary stocked with the finest medicines available. It rivaled anything found in Denver or San Francisco. Dr. Cornelius Blackwood had departed Cedar Ridge in disgrace 2 weeks after Etta's acquittal. The Territorial Medical Board had conducted their own investigation into his practices, discovering a pattern of negligence and incompetence that could no longer be ignored. His medical license was permanently revoked. Sheriff Wade Thornton had suffered a similar fate. The territorial governor, eager to maintain good relations with Silas McGraw and his mining fortune, had appointed a new sheriff who understood that justice applied equally to all citizens regardless of their background or circumstances. Etta's practice flourished beyond her most optimistic dreams. Patients traveled from across the territory to receive treatment from the physician whose reputation for skill and compassion had spread throughout the frontier. The waiting room was always full, representing every level of society, from wealthy ranchers to struggling miners. The morning brought its usual stream of patients: a cattleman's wife with a difficult pregnancy, a young miner recovering from a cave-in injury, an elderly shopkeeper whose infected wound was healing perfectly under Etta's care. Each success reinforced her position in the community. Silas entered the clinic carrying fresh supplies from the pharmacy in Denver. His transformation from mountain hermit to respected businessman was complete, but he remained most comfortable in his role as Etta's partner and assistant. Mining operations could be managed by hired professionals. His wife's medical practice required his personal attention. The Territorial Medical College sent another inquiry, he reported. Setting down the supply boxes. They want you to consider a teaching position. Etta smiled as she prepared medications for afternoon appointments. I have enough to do here. They're persistent. The dean wrote personally this time. The offer was tempting but premature. Cedar Ridge still needed her full attention, and changes were happening faster than anyone had expected. The silver mining operations had transformed the town from a rough frontier settlement into a thriving commercial center. New businesses opened weekly. Families were moving in from back east. The population had doubled in 6 months. Growth brought new challenges. More people meant more medical emergencies, more childbirths, more accidents and injuries. Etta was training 2 nursing assistants to help manage the increased patient load. But she remained the only qualified physician within 100 miles. The afternoon's final patient was special. Sarah Morrison, the rancher's daughter-in-law, had been laboring for 14 hours with her first child. Dr. Blackwood would have declared the situation hopeless and prepared the family for tragedy. Etta saw complications that required skill, but were far from insurmountable. The delivery took place in the clinic's specially designed birthing room. Silas assisted with the calm competence he had developed over months of medical procedures. Sarah's husband paced nervously in the waiting area while Etta worked to safely bring new life into the world. 2 hours later, healthy cries announced the successful arrival of James Morrison's first grandchild. Sarah held her daughter with tears of joy streaming down her face. The entire Morrison family had gathered to celebrate the newest member of their clan. You saved 3 generations of my family, James Morrison told Etta, as he held his granddaughter for the first time. My son, my daughter-in-law, and now this little angel. The birth had been witnessed by several prominent families who spread word of Etta's skill throughout the territory. Obstetric care was one area where her expertise clearly surpassed anything previously available in the region. Women were traveling extraordinary distances to ensure safe deliveries for their own children. Evening brought quiet to the clinic. Etta completed her patient records, while Silas organized medical supplies for the following day. Their partnership had evolved into perfect synchronization, each anticipating the other's needs and responsibilities. "How are you feeling?" Silas asked, his hand resting gently on Etta's expanding belly. Strong, ready. Their own child would arrive within the month. Etta had been monitoring her pregnancy with professional detachment, but recent weeks had brought the natural anxieties of impending motherhood. She would be delivering her own baby with Silas's assistance, a prospect that filled her with both confidence and nervous anticipation. The baby's kicks were becoming stronger and more frequent. Active movement suggested healthy development and normal positioning. Everything indicated a routine delivery, but Etta understood better than most that childbirth always carried risks. "Have you chosen a name?" Silas asked. "Hope, if it's a girl. And if it's a boy? Samuel, after my father." They walked home through Cedar Ridge's bustling streets. Past businesses that now welcomed them as valued citizens and community leaders. The transformation from outcasts to pillars of society had been remarkable, but it felt earned rather than gifted. Their house sat on a hill overlooking the town, with views of both the thriving community below and the wilderness beyond. It represented the perfect balance they had achieved between civilization and nature, between medical practice and personal happiness. 3 weeks later, Hope McGraw entered the world during a gentle spring dawn. Her first cries echoed through the house as Silas cut the umbilical cord with hands that had learned precision through months of medical training. Etta held her daughter with wonder, seeing in the tiny face a future free from the limitations that had defined her own early years. The mountain man, who hadn't touched a woman in 12 years now, held his daughter while his physician wife recovered from delivery. Their love story had become a legend throughout Colorado territory, inspiring other couples to believe that barriers could be overcome through courage, determination, and mutual respect. Hope McGraw would grow up in a world where her mother's medical practice served all people equally, where her father's wealth ensured opportunities previously unavailable, and where love had conquered prejudice through dignity rather than violence.